Wow!
Hey, Jort here. If you've ever gone on any fantasy forum, you've probably seen an absolute flood of people asking why there aren't more Mesopotamia-themed stories out there. Jasco is that kind of person, and I agree with him. Outside of classical Greek mythology, the Bronze Age aesthetic is criminally underutilized, and that's why today we're putting the bronze back in Bronzong. When it comes to Pokemon, it does have a few ancient culture themes going on between Unknown, Golurk and Pokelantis, but they're more Egyptian themed, which isn't quite what I'm looking for. You can really see the cultural overlap with Yu-Gi-Oh! In these, by the way. There's also that one Lucario movie, which doesn't go back further than the Middle Ages. What I want is specifically that Bronze Age feel. We're gonna take arguably the most iconic Bronze Age armor, the Dendra Panoply, and redesign Bronzong around it. It's a bit ironic, considering the Dendra is from Mycenae in modern Greece, but that's really how pop culture ends up working. What feels the most authentic isn't always the real deal. I had a similar experience with a Viking video where I had to ignore the siren song of horned helmets. I've said in past videos that my design process works backwards, starting with the final evolution and reverse engineering its pre-evolutions, and this was no different. Since my goal was to evoke the feeling of an antique warlord, obviously a pocket mirror wasn't really an appropriate base for a new Bronzor, and so I decided to base its new look on a shield. But I immediately ran into a problem. Bronzor already looks like a Bronze Age buckler. There wasn't that much I could, should and would change about its design. This really showed in my first iteration, which ended up basically being a glorified recolor. When I originally worked on this video, I was going to say the design is a bit too conservative, but this is fine, because the first evolution doesn't have to be super exciting. But then life happened, 4 months passed, and I decided the design is absolutely not good enough. So I went back to the drawing board. For Bronzor's colors, I chose to go with a classic Bronze Age palette: yellow, orange, brown, red. It felt strange to use polished bronze colors, since Bronzor's existing color scheme is based on bronze that is already oxidized. In a way, it makes it feel like a past paradox design. In my first iteration, I ended up playing around a bit with this idea, but what I want to design is a regional form, and so I decided to stick with that decision to the end. I often bring up in my videos that I have a hard time picking themes and sticking with them, at least when I'm doing Pokemon videos. As I become more experienced and more aware of this problem, it does seem to become at least a little bit easier to deal with though. The red tassel at the bottom works both as an accent color and to help tie its design together with its evolution. Funnily enough, the first iteration of Bronzor's silhouette actually looked more like a hand mirror than the original design. Obviously that was not ideal, so I copied the hand almost in its entirety from Honedge, and I think that's a great fit. I'm happy with how this one turned out. It's still Bronzor, but it's different in a way that accurately represents the new design direction, more aggressive, more hands-on. In short, a fighting type.
Bronzor, the buckler Pokemon. Recent studies find that this Pokemon was commonly used as a burial gift, with many excavations discovering the skeletons of old warriors, accompanied by a Bronzor in a deep slumber on their chest. In the modern day, superstitious folk still place these Pokemon over their doors, for it is said that its reflective body wards off evil. Trained Bronzor are extremely lethargic, and will happily spend centuries completely motionless. In the wild, Bronzor often live in small groups and are fiercely loyal to each other. In battle, they will link together to create an unbreakable shield wall, while using the strong and supple red cloth on the bottom of their bodies to strike at the enemy.
Designing Bronzong was relatively straightforward. I knew I wanted to base its look on the Dendra Panoply right from the start, essentially making it an animated suit of armor, so the real work was in getting the smaller details to look right. The eyes, the armor, trims, that kind of stuff. I wanted to keep the outline similar to the original, and the shape of Bronzong's arms already vaguely resemble a headdress, so turning them into one was pretty simple. I made sure to use AGE/'s scarf arms as a point of reference, both to stick as closely as possible to Pokemon's art direction and to hopefully allude to the redesign's martial nature. I knew I want to give my design a frowny face, as is so common with fighting types, but I wasn't really sure how to do it until I had the eureka moment when I realized I could use the shoulder pads as eyebrows, doubling down on the Dendra aesthetic and reinforcing its angry personality.
Bronzong, the Dendra Pokemon. In ancient cultures, Bronzong was believed to host the spirits of fallen warriors, and could often be found near burial sites. Completely unchanged by the passage of time, this Pokemon is now a relic of a bygone era. It was thought that champions wore these Pokemon in battle, but it was later discovered they simply replicated its shape in bronze, as it was believed that a terrible fate awaited the warrior who fell in battle while wearing it. A sturdy Pokemon, Bronzong likes to test its mettle by letting enemies strike its body until they are exhausted, feeling proud for withstanding the punishment.
Alright, and that's today's episode done. Now, a small announcement. I'm actually going to expand these guys into an entire region. Eventually. I don't have a timeline yet. So, no promises. By the way, if you want to become part of my creative process or just verbally abuse me, you should come join our Discord. Congratulations, you've made it to the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, etc, etc. And if you have any ideas of your own of what I should draw next, feel free to comment down below. Bye bye.